All right, and recording. So let's do a really quick review of our strategy for our FRQ today. I'm not going to give you the topic, though I will say I'm very confident that you will do well today on your FRQ. There's a couple, there's one tricky part, but I don't even think it's that tricky. I'm just labeling it so that you're able to make a connection, and that's the key part. So again, we need to follow our strategy today, okay? On a single FRQ, we treat it as multiple questions, okay? Multiple parts. We identify how many points each part is worth, okay? And then we go in through the planning process. I really want to see you planning today. I don't want you to jump right into it, okay? The more difficult the question is, the more time we need to spend thinking about it. Force yourself to think. On our next FRQ, I'm not going to let you pick up your pencils for 5 minutes. And you're going to have to think about the FRQ. I'm forcing you to do. Not today, because I don't feel this one is a super long thinking one. I think you'll really hit it strong. But on another harder FRQ, I'm not going to let you pick up your pencils for 5 minutes. And it's going to be a long 5 minutes. So again, think about it, plan it, okay? And now the mechanical part of it, make sure that we're identifying the sections. If A calls for 2 things, I should see 2 A's. We treat them as individual responses with a line in between. When we hit B, if B's got multiple parts, we need to have multiple B's, each being independent answers, okay? We need to make sure our answer is circular. Make sure that a portion or an idea found within our previous sentence is in our next sentence, okay? Make that linkage, okay? If we feel we need to explain something, our explanations need to be very simple, okay? Very accurate. The FRQ is not on selective incorporation, so if it was something regarding that, which it isn't, you need to tell me selective incorporation is, selectively adding the Bill of Rights to state laws. Simply put, that's a simple explanation. Okay. Tie your answer back. I'm making it circular. Make sure to answer the question. And that sounds really silly to say that, but we need to make sure that we're asking ourselves, what is this question asking me to demonstrate? What does Mr. Klepper want me to prove that I know? Okay? Prove me something. Make those clear statements, okay? You try to use purposeful words. Okay? No theys or thems or he's or she's. Make sure we're using purposeful words. Every word we write down is for a reason, okay? And that comes with the planning part of it, okay? All right? Again, I'm very confident today that you're going to do quite well on this FRQ. You have been taught this. You have been. You do need to make a connection within it. The connection is not a difficult one to make, and you'll see there needs to be a connection. The hard part is making sure you identify the correct connection, and it will make complete sense when you see it. All right? I'm going to give you 25 minutes to do it, though I don't think you'll need all 25 minutes, but make sure we use it at the best of our ability.
25 plus planning or with?
No, 25 total. Remember, you have 100 minutes, 4 FRQs, 25 minutes total. Okay? That's always the same. Remember, we're not only going to be experts on the content, we're going to be experts on the test. Yes, ma'am?
The points for the questions, identify as one.
Identify as one. Typically one. Usually, unless there's multiple identifies, but then still identify 2 things or identify 3 things, which I've never seen of 4 things. 1 per identify, okay? Describes are typically 1 to 2. Typically 1 to 2. But a describe is usually you're describing what you identified, okay? And then an explain is typically 2 to 3 points, because you usually have to identify something and then explain it and describe it, okay? Now, if we see a define, what do we think when we see the word define? Say it louder. No, not identify. Not identify. It's the separate one. The define is the hardest one. What do we got to think about? Multiple parts. A define is never a simple response. That defines are the toughest ones because there's not a lot of them out there. I'll be honest with you. There's not a lot of defines out there. But when we see a define, it has multiple parts. So you really need to think about what are the different pieces of this definition, because it's not simply, they're never going to ask you to identify selective incorporation. But they might ask you to define, well, I don't want to give you a term. You don't have a define today. You don't have a define today. Those are hard because they're multiple parts. Like there's one define out there that has 3 things that you have to hit or you don't get the point. And it's going to be a tough one. But we'll get to that. That's not today. Other good questions. Very good questions there. Other questions about the strategy. What I want to see. Better handwriting today. I want to see better handwriting. Grip the pencil softly, gently. Okay? Relax your arm muscles. You ever notice why your forearms get sore? It's because you're gripping the pencil too hard. Because as you grip, you can see, when I squeeze my fist, you can see my muscles rolling here. That's putting stress all up and down your forearm. These are simple things that we're not trying to fatigue ourselves. Now, this is not a big deal today because you're only writing 1, but that means a lot when you're writing 4. Okay? And you grip the pencil more when you're nervous. Relax. You've been taught the answer. Other questions? Other things about FRQ? Sir?
Will there always be a define FRQ?
Will there always be a define?
FRQ on the actual test.
No, there's some years they don't have a define at all. I've only probably got 3 or 4 define examples. I don't have many. I really don't. Because defines are difficult. They didn't have one last year. I don't think so.
That's a bad sign.
No, I mean you can't really do that to yourselves, folks. You can't. I've tried to identify patterns. I really can't. There's really no patterns in what they want you to demonstrate. It's just really luck of the draw. But there is a finite number of topics they can ask you about, and you'll have all those topics mastered. Okay? Sir? Well, what do you mean, like how to break them up? Well, just simply put, if A's asking you for 3 things, you have 3 A's. You can label them A1, A2, A3, and you treat them as individual questions. Okay, that's it. Remember, it's not 1 or 2 big questions, they're individual questions. Okay, they should stand on their own. All right, and remember, we should be able to understand the question by reading your response. All right, I have no problem with you making it a little shorter, maybe to save a little bit of time when you restate the question. To save you a little bit of time, but it still should be very, very clear. All right? So cut out words that you feel are unnecessary. But still, if I gave this to Dr. A, he would say, oh, you were answering this question. Okay? Others. These are good questions. Okay. Some things I want to talk about today. I'm not really talking about from any book. Did I assign 6-4 to you guys? To read. Yeah, I know, not to take notes. Okay. You can see that 6-4 is that, isn't it? It's basically that. It's interesting to look. It's to look at the chart on the chart on 210. You don't have to look at it, but it actually does a halfway decent job at some different topics there. Abortion and prayer in schools. You know, prayer in schools would be supported by a conservative, would be opposed by liberal. I think we're starting to get that idea. Yes, sir. You can fiddle up later, but it would be silly for you to leave right now. All right, so one thing that I do want to kind of reiterate that I think I started talking a little bit about it in third period is how people other than political socialization, arrive to some of these political ideologies, these political identities. We need to start looking at, like, gender, race, though I don't like saying race, age, education, economics. How do they impact a person's ideology? Because there are questions that definitely, multiple choice specifically, that really ask you to make sure you understand these sorts of things, okay? So I'm just going to kind of like blurt out some different things, and we need to start putting them in the memory bank. And if you want to, you can always go back and re-listen to this. So if I said, women have a tendency to be what ideology? Women definitely have a tendency to be more liberal, definitely. What are some things that would contribute to that?
The topic of abortion.
The topic of abortion, yeah.
Pay for women, like equal equality.
Again, that's a more progressive idea, equal pay for women. That is a more liberal approach. And by me saying this, and I don't want to offend any of my conservatives in here, it's not saying that you're opposed of it. It's not a focal point of your ideology. No conservative, no Republican candidate is going to get up there and saying no equal pay for women. That's stupid. But it might not be on their agenda. It might be not like what they want to focus their platform on as we talk about that sort of stuff eventually. So we need to make sure that we don't say, well, if it's not, you know what, absolutism? Okay, or the idea if you're not with us, you're against us, kind of that's a little bit of absolutism. Pretty much, I don't want you to get that mentality. If I say liberals are for this, it doesn't mean conservatives are against it. I'm not saying that, and vice versa. What I'm saying is that liberals, Democrats have a more focused approach on ensuring women equality than a conservative. Though a conservative would not fight against that; it'd be stupid. Maybe some conservatives would. Maybe more of a traditionalist would maybe go against that, seeing the roles of the gender roles. Okay. What about African Americans? Definitely more liberal. Definitely identify more with the Democratic Party. Definitely. What about college-aged males? More liberal again, definitely. And what we'll notice too, as education increases, as someone becomes more highly educated, where do they have a tendency to go towards? Liberal. We definitely need to know that. But as economic prosperity increases, where do people have a tendency to go? More conservative, okay? And because they want to protecting their assets, they want to protect their money a little bit. Because we know that liberals are more for providing more services, a more of equality of outcome approach, the redistribution of wealth. And again, a more conservative approach would be, an equitable system, a more equality of opportunity approach. Okay? What about the Hispanic population? Because that is the fastest growing minority group in this country. And this one's a little trickier. I would say, yeah. I would argue middle, leaning a little bit towards liberalism. A little bit. But again, the Hispanic population focuses predominantly on what major issue? Immigration. That's a huge issue. And what Republican presidential candidate is really may bring in that Hispanic vote for the Republicans? Rubio. I mean, he's from our state, for heaven's sake. So again, it's interesting to look at. But what is kind of against Marco Rubio, even if he attracts Hispanic voters? Not the white majority. I would say, will the Hispanic population get out and vote? It's and I've said this. I don't know what I think it was third period again. I said Saul, great example. Parents are involved in politics. Not I don't want to say involved, but are informed of politics, but they don't vote. He says. So will that Rubio be able, if he wins the nomination, will he be able to pull that Hispanic vote? Because I tell you what, if the Republican Party can start attracting that Hispanic vote, and they can get them out to vote, and get the Tea Party under control a little bit, Democrats ain't gonna win. Democrats can't win because they're facing a very worrisome situation this coming in 2016 because we know it's going to be Hillary. Are they going to be able to attract what vote? No. Black vote. Yeah. All right. Because will black voters get behind a white female? And you might call me racist right now, but that's how people vote. There are people that voted for President Obama strictly because he was black. There are people that voted strictly against President Obama because he was black. It's a sad thing, but people look at the skin color more than qualifications at times. So again, it's kind of interesting, but these are the types of things that lead us to a strong ideology, an ideological approach to understanding where someone is and how do they evolve. What are some other demographics that we could kind of try to break apart? What about retirees? More conservative, definitely, much more of that traditionalist approach. Okay, what else? Asian population, which is, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Any guesses? I would say more moderate, but leaning towards probably the conservative approach. Because if you look at Asian politics, it's a very conservative type of politics.
Also, since don't they tend to be more wealthy than general population?
Technically, usually within this country, the Asian population is more of the wealthier groups. But they view, and as I think Kayla will agree with me, they view wealth in a different way than let's say a white person. Any other demographics that we can talk about?
Maybe sexuality, people that
Oh.
are not straight would be more liberal.
Oh yeah, definitely. That community. What?
Yeah, extremely more liberal.
Well, I wouldn't say extremely liberal. I would not say that because I have one very good friend who is gay. I love him to death. He is so conservative. I mean, oh my goodness gracious, he is rah Republicans. So we can't say that. Yes, the tendencies for that community, the transgender, the gay and lesbian community, we can't say that they're super raging, ultra left-wing liberals. They say they have a tendency to be liberal, yes, but there is some exceptions to that rule, as my friend would clearly argue against. Clearly argue against. What?
I don't understand.
You don't understand why he's like that?
I mean, I don't understand. Isn't that kind of contradictory?
Well, not necessarily, because you're focusing on one issue. You're focusing on strictly rights of the gay and lesbian community. That's what you're focusing on.
Yeah.
He focuses on everything. He focuses on, the ideas of the death penalty and order and smaller government, and he's big on equality of opportunity. He hates accommodations. He hates the idea of the redistribution of income. He hates this, and he's not a wealthy individual. He's a teacher, a darn good one too. Darn good teacher. I won't give him his name, but man, he doesn't teach. He doesn't teach here, but he teaches at Gray Middle School. Does he teach? Yeah, I think he still teaches there. He's darn good teacher. Darn good teacher. Don't try to figure out who it is or anything, but again, he focuses on a lot of other issues, which you might find interesting, but that's what he believes in. So we have good talks all the time. Any other demographics? Religious demographic. Christians are more conservative, but what type of Christians? White Christians. White Christians, okay? Because there is that African American Christian community that has a tendency to be more liberal, okay? I hope everybody's okay with this type of conversation because this is just real stuff here. I mean, this is real stuff. If you ever get involved in a campaign, no matter if it's Republican or Democrat, this is the kind of stuff they talk about. They talk about attracting the African American vote. They talk about attracting the Hispanic, the white vote. And that it's a balancing act because you don't want to tick off one group when you're trying to appease another group. So and if you're good at this, if you're good at handling, you're going to make a lot of money, folks. You're going to make a lot of money if you can manage a campaign. They're going to pay you big bucks because they want to win. Because winning elections is big time money. You got to realize presidential election, just the presidential election, over $2 billion will be spent. $2 billion. Both candidates together. But that doesn't include primaries. That doesn't include the money they're spending right now traveling everywhere. It's crazy, folks, the amount of money that's spent.
So, but is that just their campaign? Like, what about the money like spent for example, like broadcasting them on TV? Like,
That's
we have to
including
put
that.
that
That's
that
including
includes
that. That's the big part of it. The TV money is huge.
Like-
So huge.
Yeah, but what about like debates?
They don't pay for those. Those are put on by the networks because the networks buy out those rights to get those debates, so then they can sell commercial time. They bid for those sorts of things, so they don't have to pay for those. They don't have to pay for those. Yeah. Those networks want those debates because they bring viewers, and then they can sell ad revenue. It's kind of like the idea of like buying 30 seconds of Super Bowl time. That's what $25 million, $50 million for a 30-second spot on Super Bowl time because you know how many people are watching it. Same sort of thing. You know that a ton of people are watching the Republican debate, and the Republicans love Trump, or I'm sorry, not the Republicans. The ad agencies love Trump because more people are tuning in to watch him. I'll be honest, I did not tune in last night. I was not feeling well, but all you're thinking now, liberal. That's all you're thinking right now. What else? Some good questions. We'll go for like 4 more minutes. Any others? Yes, sir.
Does geographic location count?
Yeah, I would definitely say that. We talked a little bit this about in 6th period, like the heartland of the United States.
But isn't that political socialization as well? Because wherever you live, there'll be more people.
Well, I would say that's environmental. I would say that is a part of political socialization because of your location. If we look in big cities, where do we see a lot of liberal or do we see a lot of liberal? Definitely. I mean, that's the funny thing. If you look at the state of Florida, we're nothing but red other than the big cities. Orange County, Miami-Dade, those counties are the ones that win. If you look at the United States, it looks really, really red, especially in the center. But again, those are not the population centers. So the numbers aren't there. So it's not the electoral votes aren't there when we come to talk about presidential situations. But that's another reason why it's a lot easier for who to control the Senate. No, that doesn't make sense, but who is able to control the Senate? Because of a greater number of states being Republican, because they control more states, just not more population. We've talked about that, where the Republican Party has always been the smaller of the two parties since its real adoption, but it's been a much more focused party, a much more motivated to vote party. But they've lost a little bit of that. They lost that with the Tea Party, but they really lost their advantage when President Obama ran in 2008 because he was able to pull an untapped resource, and that was the African American vote. Okay? And again, it will be interesting if those same voters in 8 and then 12 will come out in 16. I'm really curious to see that. Really, really curious. It's one thing to say they're going to vote. It's another thing to actually get out and do it. All right, that is what I have for you. Thank you for being here. Again, you're going to do great on your FRQ. Make sure you have a sharp pencil or two and paper, and have a lovely day.
So Robert,